Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Fedrick. Host Eddie Fedrick.
So glad you can join us. No Senate pick for 18-year-old Kathdiwala in Barbados after all. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Wednesday, 23rd March 2022. Details when we return.
Hubbard's Multi-Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. In a media release on Saturday, Prime Minister Mia Mottley of Barbados stated that there was clear indication by independent senators that they would not have supported the measure to allow 18-year-old Kathdiwala in Barbados to become the youngest senator ever in Barbados' history. Details in this Barbados Today news item.
Prominent attorney at law Gregory Nichols is the new government senator. His return to the upper chamber comes on the heels of a dramatic turn of events at the weekend. Prime Minister Mia Mottley named Nichols as the man to take up the post 24 hours after ending her bid to enable the appointment of an 18-year-old senator, as well as the appointment of 2 senators nominated by the party securing the second highest number of votes in the preceding general election. Her decision followed the adjournment of debate on the constitutional amendment bill in the Senate last Friday, after it became clear that independent senators were not prepared to support the measure that required 2/3 majority of the vote. Barbadian scholar and student advocate Khalil Kathdiwala was tipped to become the island's youngest senator. Political scientist Devron Bruce told Barbados Today the developments in the Senate were somewhat surprising.
I would say that I certainly did not anticipate that this would have been the matter, and I do understand some of the arguments being raised. Personally, I don't see an issue with reducing the age from 21 to 18. I think the age difference is really inconsequential, and I'm not in objection towards that. So it's an unfortunate circumstance for Kathdiwala, but it's certainly not reflective of the absence of other individuals who could have a similar impact within the Senate who are also young.
Mottley expressed her disappointment, noting that it is unfortunate that in the midst of global turmoil with respect to youth in crisis, Barbados finds itself at a point where embracing young people and youthful leadership is clearly still beyond its imagination. Kathdiwala, in a brief post on his Facebook page on Sunday, described Nichols' appointment as an excellent choice, given his grasp of issues and significant experience. Kathdiwala stressed the government side still has 4 young senators whose contributions will make the country proud. He said he would remain a student of governance and the management of public life in Barbados. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister's office has indicated that President Dame Sandra Mason is likely to later this week name the final 2 independent senators that will complete the full complement of senators for this parliament. The Prime Minister had initially offered the seats to the Democratic Labour Party, and Bruce suggested a turn of events could have implications for the DLP.
Interestingly enough, I think that one of the major considerations has to be the fact that the Democratic Labour Party now finds itself in a circumstance where the amendment to the Constitution no longer favors them because they believe the bill was pulled. So I think that is what one of the key considerations has to be regarding the developments on the matter. And in essence, we have to see whether or not the president will act, given the piece of legislation has now been pulled.
The Central Bank of the Bahamas gives a statement on Russian exposure. ZNS News has more.
A February 28 Central Bank of the Bahamas surveillance exercise of international bank and trust companies' level of Russian business activities confirms that approximately $420 million in deposits and $2.5 billion in custody or trust assets with ultimate beneficial owners from or connected to Russia. The central bank press release Friday indicated that the greatest proportion of Russian exposure would be linked to the international sector. However, the central bank is currently canvassing domestic financial institutions, commercial banks, money transmission, business, and electronic money service providers to ascertain if any level of exposure within those sectors. The central bank maintains the information disclosed are aggregates for the international banking and trust sector and not specific to any sanctioned interest. The surveillance comes after the groups of financial services regulators of the Bahamas issued a directive to Bahamian financial institutions against doing business with sanctioned persons and entities of Russia and Belarus on March 12.
Over now to Trinidad and Tobago, where it is not out of the woods just yet with the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is according to geneticist, consultant, and Genix Diagnostics, Dr. Nicole Ramlachan. There is still need for caution in Trinidad and Tobago as COVID deaths continue to occur. TV6's Nicole M. Ramani has more.
Dr. Ramlachan says, while there are countries drastically easing COVID-19 restrictions, we in Trinidad and Tobago should not become complacent. She believes the new strain of the virus may be a combination of the Omicron and the Delta variants.
They are suspecting is that a single individual was infected with both Delta and Omicron at the same time, which we know has happened. But in this case, it actually recombines. It's almost like you've had the original Delta with a few changes in addition to the spike protein of the Omicron, which is notable because remember that spike protein mutation, I came on and explained that is what actually is like the grappling hook that hooks the virus into the alveolar cells of the lungs and so on. And that is much better in Omicron at actually transmitting the virus, allowing the virus to infect more people. So that's what it was. That's really why it's of concern, because we are hoping that we're not seeing a change towards more severity, towards more of the Delta, which is what really is a more severe virus.
However, she says, there have been only about a dozen cases and it has not been officially declared a variant of concern yet. She notes that while internationally countries are making changes to restrictions based on their health, social and economic policies, this country should still exercise some care and caution. Dr. Ramlachan says currently, the stringency index is something that is being used to measure school closures, travel bans, etc. from 0 to 100, 100 being the highest.
Hong Kong tends to be, and China, of course, because of their zero COVID tolerance, tend to be in the 75, 85. I think China is close to 90. Trinidad is right at about 56. And countries like Norway and stuff and Denmark and a lot of the European countries that have released their restrictions are down, way down like 13% and so on. So we are somewhere in between, which is where we should be based on our population, based on our numbers and our cases, based on our, remember, we are still getting deaths. It is not a zero mortality. We haven't gone all the way back down to zero again. We're still bouncing around 4 or 5 deaths per million. We came down as low as 2.98, which is, great this last week here. So, hopefully the mortality is going to keep down to that level. So, it's not only just the case numbers you're looking at. Remember, you have to always bring in mortality.
The geneticist consultant tells TV6 she believes this country is doing well. She admits that there are pockets where people are flouting the health protocols, but she says generally the virus has been contained so far. Nicole M. Romani, TV6 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
Still on Trinidad, the PNM is ready for all elections, be it local, by or general. So says party stalwart Fitzgerald Hines in response to news that both the former top cop and the PDP intend to contest the upcoming elections. Vanessa Cutting of TV6 News reports.
Political aspirants come and go. It's the summation of National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines, who had concerns the PDP and former top cop Gary Griffith being in the running for the general elections in 2025. Hines says he's confident the people will make the right choice.
We did it in 2015, we did it in 2020, and we are heading to doing it again in 2025. And I'll tell you this, there are those, our political opponents, who are led by a serial loser. They appear to be making a lot of noise, like it appears as though they don't want to wait until the next general elections in this democracy. We are mindful of all of their shenanigans. We are watching well, but we as a PNM will be ready for elections, local, government, or by election, whenever that comes.
Red concerns issues of public disquiet, such as the lingering questions surrounding the withdrawal of the merit list. Hines says there is nothing else that can be said on the matter.
For my own part, I've never even seen a merit list. For my part, I don't even know what it looks like. And I gather the way things go, that the Prime Minister would probably never have seen one in his life as well. But of course, he has spoken, the President has spoken, the former Chairman of the Police Service Commission have spoken, and many other people have spoken. There's nothing useful else, I might add.
Hines also responded to a question in the public domain as to why he was not reassigned from national security in the Prime Minister's latest cabinet reshuffle.
That question would be better directed to him. But for my part as Minister of National Security, I know what my mandate is. I know what is expected of me from the National Security Council as Minister of National Security. I know what my responsibilities are from the perspective of the Prime Minister. I understand full well what my parliamentary responsibility is, what my ministerial responsibilities are, and I am carrying them out to the best of my ability. And all who work with me, every head of every division in national security, and the cabinet, and all else, will tell you that I carry out my duties painstakingly, and I hope ultimately assessed to me quite well.
Renessa Cutting, TV6 News.
Guyana's Ministry of Education has made a decision to fully reopen all public schools for face-to-face full-time learning from 25th April across the country. Gordon Mosley of News Source Guyana tells us more.
While most public schools have been reopened for months, many of the classes were still continuing virtually, and some classes were only held on specific days. Education Minister Priya Malik Chen today said that the reopening after the Easter holidays will be done in a staggering approach.
After the Easter holiday, there's a staggered reopening not to shock the system after this 2 years of closure. So within the first week, grades will be going out back at different dates. We'll announce that shortly. With the last grade being grade 7 and nursery the following week. Grade 7 in the primary, in secondary, and grades 1 and 2 in primary, and then nursery 1. We are trying to make sure our schools are equipped and ready for sanitizing and hand washing and toilets flushing and so on.
Schools in Guyana closed their doors in March of 2020 following the first set of cases of COVID-19. As the virus continued to spread across the country, schools remained closed to face-to-face learning. However, classes continued virtually. Last September, the ministry made a decision to begin the phased reopening of schools, but still left it up to the schools themselves to decide on the frequency of in-person classes. Today, the Minister of Education said that after 2 years, schools are now better prepared for face-to-face classes.
We have consolidated all the curricula. So from grades 1 to 9, we have shaved off things that are not necessary. We've made the curriculum into a 20-week curriculum. We have completely changed the way grade 6 is going to be written. We've taken off the grade 6 segment completely and it stops at grade 5. We are retraining teachers in how to deliver this consolidated curricula. We expect that if you will do the grade before when you go into school, so students who go into school in September at grade 4 will really be doing grade 3's work. Then when they come up in the 20 weeks, then they move on to grade 4. When they go into grade 5, they'll begin with grade 4 work and then move up as their competency levels build.
The Education Ministry has been concerned about learning loss over the past 2 years of the pandemic and the impact on children and the nation's education system.
Hubbard's Motor Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipment assortments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.